wake up!
Oh, no. Stay calm. I'll get help now.
Boston winter, bright ER lights. Adrian Cole, the kind of man who could be your quiet neighbor, finds a 7-year-old with a red scarf holding his limp brother. A bent brass token warms his palm, stirring a regret he never outran. He signs, he stays, but whispers rise of a missing father and broken brakes. Can one promise keep two boys together before time, and the truth run out? Snow whipped across Boston as the ER doors sighed open and the smell of bleach hit. Adrian Cole stepped in, navy coat dusted white, red tie steady against a crisp shirt, side-swept dark hair traced with gray, deep blue eyes that listened. He paused, because a small voice cut through the noise. "Please," the boy whispered at the desk, "my brother." A 7-year-old clutched a red-knit scarf. In his other arm, a toddler hung limp in that terrifying way bodies do when the fight drains out. The boy lifted, faltered. Adrian was there before panic snapped. "I've got him," he said, sliding the child into his arms. Heat jumped under his palm, fever hot. Damp curls stuck to the toddler's brow. "What's his name?" "Leo?" the boy said, voice shaking. "I'm Ben." "Hi, Ben. I'm Adrian." He kept his tone low. "We'll get help. Stay with me." The triage nurse glanced up, overwhelmed. Adrian didn't bark. He stepped into her sightline, posture quiet with authority. "2 minors. 1 unresponsive, febrile. We need a room." He looked to Ben. "Can you walk?" Ben nodded, scarf twisting like a red rope in his fist. They moved down the corridor to pediatrics, where the lights softened and murals of trains ran along the wall. A resident reached for Leo and met Adrian's calm gaze, then took the child without argument. "Vitals, fluids, labs," the nurse said. Ben hovered in the doorway. Adrian knelt to level the world. Up close, the scarf was frayed where yarn had been pulled and tied again, a map of repair. "You did the right thing," he said. "I carried him," Ben whispered. "He kept getting colder." "You kept him safe," Adrian said. A pulse oximeter chirped. He let its rhythm steady his breathing, and Ben matched him, little shoulders easing. A doctor entered, fast hands, focused eyes. "Any allergies? Meds? How long has he been like this?" Ben's mouth opened, words tangling. Adrian didn't answer for him. He shifted, a shoulder making space while Ben found air. "Since morning," Ben managed. "He was sleepy, then burning up. We walked. The heat at home doesn't work." "What about your parents?" the doctor asked, listening to Leo's chest. Ben swallowed and looked at the scarf. His thumb found a small knot and pressed like it might hold the world together. "Mom," he stopped. "One thing at a time," Adrian said softly. "Help first." "Agreed," the doctor said. "Sir, you'll need to wait outside." "I'll stay with him," Adrian replied, not leaving Ben's side. "You have consent to treat. He needs a steady face." Ben blinked. "You don't even know us." "I know enough," Adrian said, a half smile warming his voice. "Your brother needs calm. I can help with that." They were given 2 chairs behind a thin curtain. Machines breathed. Leo's chest rose, small and stubborn. Ben sat on his hands to stop the tremor, the scarf pooled in his lap like a lifeline. "Tell me something about Leo," Adrian said to fill the silence. "He likes trains," Ben said. "He makes the sound when we cross the bridge." Adrian nodded. "Then we'll listen for that again." A nurse taped the IV. Leo moaned. Ben flinched. Adrian covered Ben's hand with his own, warm, steady. "I'm here," he said simply. "Why?" Ben asked. "People don't usually stay." Adrian glanced at the red scarf, at its small knots and second chances. "Sometimes," he said low, "you see a thread you're meant to hold." Outside, sleet rattled the glass. Inside, time narrowed to the monitors and the shape of a promise he hadn't spoken. The doctor returned, eyes set. "We're moving him to pediatrics for monitoring," she said. "Now." Adrian rose with Ben. The doors opened onto a corridor that looked long and uncertain. Ben's hand sought his without asking. Adrian's grip answered, steady. They stepped forward together, the red scarf trailing like a bright line through winter, and Adrian, quiet neighbor, executive, matched his pace to a boy who refused to let go. Adrian stayed beside Ben as the gurney carried Leo deeper into pediatrics. The boy's scarf trailed, red against white linoleum, until he tucked it tight. They were shown into a small exam room where monitors hummed and a pediatric oncologist entered with calm eyes but a firm tone. "Severe aplastic anemia," she said, reviewing lab results. "His bone marrow isn't producing enough cells. Infection risk is dangerously high. He'll need transfusions, antibiotics, and long-term treatment." Ben blinked, too young for the words but sensing their weight. His lips trembled. "Is he gonna die?" Adrian's throat tightened. He turned to the doctor. "What's the immediate step?" "A private room. Isolated care. We'll start supportive treatment tonight. Insurance is a question." The boy's face crumpled. "We don't have—" "I'll cover it," Adrian interrupted, steady as stone. "Private suite. Best team you have. No delays." The doctor studied him, then nodded. "We'll move him right away." Ben stared, uncertain. "Why are you—" "Because he deserves a chance," Adrian said. "And so do you." They were guided through dim corridors, machines trailing behind, until they reached a quiet suite with glass walls and filtered air. Leo lay pale against crisp sheets, IV glowing green. Nurses worked with quiet precision. Ben pressed against the glass, small hands leaving smudges. Mom used to sit with him when he had fevers, but she— His voice broke. "She died. Fire in the boiler. 2 months ago." Adrian crouched to meet his eyes. "And your dad?" "Gone. Since the fire." Ben's breath shuddered. "He always said we had luck, but luck left." From his pocket, the boy pulled something wrapped in tissue, an old brass transit token, bent and dulled by time. He held it out. "Dad called this our luck. Said if we kept it, we'd never be alone. But—" He pressed it into Adrian's hand. "It didn't work." Adrian closed his fingers around the cold metal, pulse heavy. The boy's faith had been shattered, and yet he offered it anyway. He saw his own past in that gesture. Nights when his younger brother had clung to a coin, a toy, a thread of hope, while insurance forms gathered dust. "You're not alone now," Adrian said softly. "Not while I'm here." Ben's chest hitched. "You promise?" Adrian touched the boy's scarf, tying one loose end with a practiced knot. "I promise." The doctor reappeared. "He's stabilized for now, but this is a marathon, not a sprint. We'll discuss donor options, bone marrow registry, possible transplant." "Do whatever it takes," Adrian said, voice firm. "I'll sign the papers." She handed over a clipboard. He wrote without hesitation, signature bold on the lines, and felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier than any corporate deal. Later, as monitors beeped in the quiet, Ben sat in a chair too big for him. His eyelids drooped, but he fought to stay awake. "If I fall asleep, will you—" "I'll be here," Adrian assured. He settled beside the boy, coat draped over the chair, tie loosened. He didn't look like a CEO now. He looked like someone holding vigil. The red scarf slipped from Ben's lap and brushed Adrian's hand. He didn't move it. Symbols mattered. Scarf, token, the thread between promises and lives not yet broken. Through the glass, Leo stirred, small chest rising against the odds. Adrian breathed with him, a vow unspoken but binding. He would not let history repeat. Not this time. Adrian's phone buzzed, a discreet vibration in the pocket of his tailored suit. He ignored it. His focus was on the small figure curled in the chair, scarf wrapped like a shield, eyes heavy but stubbornly awake. His chief of staff, Marcus Lynn, slipped quietly into the suite. He carried a folder under his arm, expression tight. "Adrian, I dug into the name you gave me. Miguel Alvarez. Maintenance foreman at North Pier Terminal." Adrian frowned. "That's one of ours. Cole Dynamics manages North Pier through harbor operations. Marcus nodded. Yes, and here's the strange part. He filed multiple maintenance reports, serious safety concerns, about a subcontractor's brake components for the new light rail project. 2 weeks later, the boiler fire killed his wife. Then he vanished. Ben's head lifted, bleary but sharp. "That's my dad," he whispered. He said people were mad at him for telling the truth. His small fists clenched the scarf. Adrian exchanged a look with Marcus, a weight passing between them. "Do we have the reports?" "Not all," Marcus said, lowering his voice, "but I got copies of 2. If these are real, someone buried complaints that could shut down half the project." Adrian's jaw tightened. He'd signed off on Sentinel, the city's pride, a sleek light rail meant to transform Boston Transit, and Cole Dynamics' reputation. If parts were counterfeit, thousands of lives were at risk. Ben stood, scarf trailing. He reached into his pocket again and pulled out the bent brass transit token. He pressed it into Adrian's palm once more, firmer this time. "Dad said this was lucky. Said if I gave it to the right person, they'd keep us safe. Is that you?" Adrian looked at the coin, then at Ben. "I'll take it," he said quietly. "And I'll take care of you. That's a promise." The token sat heavy, its worn edges biting into his hand. Symbols had power, and he felt its demand. Protect these boys, uncover the truth, stand where others had failed. Marcus cleared his throat. "There's more. Security's been hearing whispers about Orion Systems, subcontractor on the Sentinel project, shell vendors, invoices that don't add up. If Miguel was digging there, then someone had motive," Adrian finished grimly. His gaze shifted back to Ben, who leaned against the glass, watching Leo sleep under a canopy of wires and light. The boy's reflection looked too old for 7. Adrian touched the scarf gently, the red yarn worn thin but resilient. "You won't be alone in this," he said again. Ben's small voice cracked. "You really mean it?" Adrian nodded. "I don't break promises." Outside the glass, the city pressed on. Trains rattling, towers glowing, deals being signed. But in this room, a different contract was sealed. A bent token, a red scarf, and a man who finally chose people over profit. Adrian stood straighter, decision hardening in him. "Marcus, pull everything on Orion Systems, every invoice, every signature, every vendor, quietly." Marcus nodded. "And the board? I'll handle them," Adrian said. His eyes never left Ben. "This isn't just business anymore." The boy's hand slid into his, warm and trembling, and Adrian held on, knowing the real fight was only beginning. Night fell heavy over the hospital. Adrian stood by the wide window of the suite, city lights flickering like restless eyes. Inside, machines pulsed a steady rhythm, and Ben dozed fitfully in the chair, scarf wrapped around his neck like armor. The door clicked open. Dana Pike, Cole Dynamics head of security, entered with a tablet under her arm. Her voice was quiet but edged. "We've got a problem." Adrian stepped away from the glass. "Go on." Complaints came in about Orion Systems. Subpar brake components for the Sentinel line, several flagged as counterfeit. "Guess who signed the vendor approvals?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Voss." Dana nodded grimly. "Randall Voss, your CFO. His signature appears on multiple invoices, and Orion's trail connects to shell companies." She swiped the tablet, showing scanned forms, identical loops of ink across different documents. Forensics match. Adrian felt the weight of the brass token in his pocket. Miguel had known. He'd filed grievances, and weeks later his wife was dead. The fire wasn't coincidence. It was warning. From the chair, Ben stirred, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Mr. Adrian?" Adrian crouched beside him, voice softer now. "Yeah, Ben. Is Leo gonna be okay?" Adrian glanced at the monitor, then back at the boy. "He's fighting hard, and he's not fighting alone." Ben's eyes flickered to the scarf, then to Adrian's tie pin. He reached out, tracing the engraved heartbeat line. That's what they listen for, right? To make sure someone's alive. Adrian's chest ached. That's right. He held the boy's hand a moment longer before standing. Dana's eyes met his. There's more. A visitor came earlier asking for Leo, claimed to be from Child Services. No record exists. Wrong badge number. Adrian's shoulders stiffened. They came for him? Yeah. We intercepted, but they'll try again. Adrian looked at Ben, who hugged the scarf closer, fear rippling beneath his small frame. Then at Leo, pale under the glow of machines. He turned back to Dana, voice low, steady, final. No one touches them. Lock the elevators, restrict access. Move them to a secure suite under our protection. Dana gave a crisp nod. Already in motion. Moments later, staff wheeled Leo's bed down hushed corridors, Ben holding Adrian's hand as though it was the only thing tethering him to safety. The new room was deeper inside the wing, access coded, cameras angled to catch every angle. Ben whispered, "Why are people after us? We didn't do anything." Adrian knelt, meeting his eyes with a calm he forced himself to hold. Sometimes, when the wrong people get scared of the truth, they hurt those who carry it. But I won't let that happen to you or Leo. Tears welled in Ben's eyes. You mean it? Adrian smoothed the scarf over his shoulder, tying it just enough to feel steady. I don't make promises I can't keep. Ben clutched the scarf, then leaned into Adrian's chest, letting exhaustion win. Adrian's arms folded around him, protective, unshakable. Symbols mattered. Scarf, token, the heartbeat line, and tonight they bound them all. Behind the glass, Leo slept on, fragile but alive. Outside, forces gathered, hidden in boardrooms and forged documents. But inside this room, a family was forming, unlikely, unfinished, but strong enough to withstand the storm about to break. The suite was quiet except for the soft beep of monitors and the whisper of filtered air. Adrian sat in the chair by Leo's bed, red scarf draped across his lap where Ben had left it before finally falling asleep. Dana entered with a flash drive and a face like granite. Pulled everything, she said, setting the drive on the small table. Invoices, vendor trails, forged approvals. Orion Systems is dirty, and the signatures, she tapped a folder. They're Randall Voss's. Adrian rubbed the bridge of his nose. His CFO had been with Cole Dynamics for nearly a decade. Loyalty, sharp numbers, board favorite. And now, this. Chain of custody? Adrian asked quietly. Preserved, Dana replied. I've already locked copies in 3 encrypted vaults. No leaks unless you decide. Adrian turned the bent brass token in his pocket, its edges rough under his thumb. Miguel had carried warnings no one wanted to hear. He'd lost his wife to fire, his children to fear, and his voice to silence. Now, Adrian held the evidence that could vindicate him. Ben stirred in the corner, blinking awake. What's wrong? Adrian crouched beside him, keeping his voice steady. Sometimes people sign papers they shouldn't. Your dad tried to stop them. Is that why he's gone? Adrian hesitated, then nodded once. He told the truth. That scared the wrong people. Ben's chin trembled, but he pressed the scarf to his face, drawing courage from its frayed yarn. He always said luck runs out unless you fight for it. Adrian looked at him, the boy's eyes too steady for 7. Then we'll fight, he said softly. Together. A nurse entered, whispering that Leo's fever was down for the moment. Relief washed through the room, fragile but real. Adrian exhaled, then turned back to Dana. We draft a confidential brief for federal investigators, he said. No board leaks, no press. Voss will bury us if he knows. Dana gave a sharp nod. I'll handle the logistics. Later, as the hospital settled into night, sprinklers hissed above them without warning. Water cascaded onto Leo's bed, alarms blaring. Nurses shouted, scrambling. Adrian lunged, lifting the small boy in his arms. IV dangling, monitors shrieking. Ben screamed, clutching the scarf, slipping on the wet floor. Dana burst back into the room, radio in hand. "It's not the system. It's sabotage. Only this room triggered." Adrian held Leo close, body shielding him from the spray. His suit clung, water pooling in polished shoes, but none of it mattered. He barked, "Get us out, now!" Dana's team ushered them through a side stairwell, lights flickering, the smell of burning wires sharp. Cameras caught a figure sprinting away, face hidden by a mask. In the stairwell, Adrian shifted Leo against his chest. Ben's small hand clung to his soaked sleeve, scarf plastered to his neck. Adrian met Dana's gaze. "They've declared war." "And will answer," Dana replied, but Adrian's eyes were only on the boys. The evidence could wait. What mattered now was keeping them alive. By the time the sprinklers had been silenced and Leo settled into yet another room, the hospital felt less like a refuge and more like a battlefield. Adrian stood at the foot of the bed, shirt still damp, watching the boy's chest rise and fall beneath the thin blanket. Dana entered quietly, placing a sealed evidence bag on the table. "Pulled the video feed. We've got a clear shot of the saboteur. Masked, but his build, his walk, matches one of Orion's contract techs, the one Miguel filed against before he disappeared." Adrian's fists curled at his sides. "They're targeting children. That tells me they're desperate." Ben perched in the chair, scarf clutched tight. His voice wavered. "They'll come back, won't they?" Adrian crouched beside him, blue eyes steady. "Not if I can help it. And I don't bluff, Ben." Dana slid a folder across the table. "We've traced Orion's payments, bogus invoices, shell vendors, each signed off by Randall Voss. Forensics confirmed the loops of his signature. It's clean fraud." Adrian opened the folder, eyes scanning pages stamped with numbers that bled betrayal. Voss, his CFO, his board's golden boy, had been bleeding the project, risking lives, while he sat in shareholder meetings smiling. "This doesn't stay internal," Adrian said finally. "We build a federal brief, chain of custody intact. The truth doesn't get buried like Miguel's warnings." Dana's voice dropped. "That's not all. Some of these invoices date back over 2 years. If exposed, it won't just be Orion. It'll blow back on Cole Dynamics. On you." Adrian let out a slow breath, the weight settling. "And let it. If the cost of saving them is my name, I'll pay it." Ben looked between them, eyes wide. You'd do that? For us?" Adrian placed the bent brass token in the boy's palm. "Your dad called this luck. But luck isn't something we wait for. It's something we fight for. And yes, Ben, I'll fight." The boy closed his fingers around the coin, shoulders trembling with the effort of holding back tears. "Then I'll fight too." Later, when the hospital finally quieted, Adrian sat by Leo's bed, tie loosened, jacket draped over a chair. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of old train tickets he'd found earlier that day, remnants from a project kickoff. He spread them on the table, the paper edges curling like tiny tracks. When Ben wandered over, curious, Adrian handed him one. "Thought you might like these. You said Leo loves trains." Ben studied the ticket, then smiled faintly for the first time in days. "We used to pretend the couch was a train. Mom would be the conductor." His voice faltered. I don't want him to forget her." Adrian's voice softened. "He won't. Not while you remember for both of you." Ben looked at him a long moment, then carefully tucked the train ticket into his scarf like another thread binding memory to hope. Outside, the city slept unaware, but inside this quiet room, trust was stitching itself together, piece by fragile piece. The hospital seemed to exhale after the sabotage scare, but Adrian knew it was only the eye of the storm. The secure suite was quiet, sterile, too still for comfort. Leo slept beneath warm blankets, his fever checked for now, while Ben sat on the floor near the bed, train ticket in one hand, scarf looped around his wrist. Dana entered, face grim. We reviewed every camera angle. The tech who triggered the sprinklers vanished through a service corridor. Whoever sent him isn't finished. Adrian stood, his wet shirt exchanged for a fresh one, though exhaustion traced his shoulders. We'll keep doubling security. No one touches them again. But Dana's eyes narrowed. It's more than harassment. They want leverage. Voss and his friends know Miguel recorded something, or that his boys might know more than they should. Adrian's jaw clenched. Miguel filed grievances. If he's alive, he's the key. Dana tapped her tablet. There's chatter on a union forum. A phrase keeps popping up. Token to track number 47. It reads like a code. Adrian felt the brass token heavy in his pocket. The boy gave me this, he murmured. Called it luck. Ben looked up, curious. That was Dad's. He said if we ever got lost, the token would find a way to bring us back. The room stilled. Even Dana leaned in, sensing the thread. It could be coordinates. Or a rail marker. Adrian crouched, looking into Ben's tired eyes. Did your dad ever tell you more? About the token? Ben nodded slowly. He said track 47 was where trains sleep at night. If I held the coin there, I'd always hear him. Adrian and Dana exchanged a glance. Freight spur, North Pier. Adrian's chest tightened. If Miguel was hiding, that's where he'd go. He rose, decision already made. We're going to North Pier tonight. Dana frowned. It's too exposed. You're the CEO of Cole Dynamics, not a field agent. Adrian's voice was steel. I'm also the man who promised these boys they wouldn't be split apart. If finding Miguel is the way to protect them, then that's exactly what I'll do. Ben clutched the scarf, hope flickering in his eyes. You'll bring him back? Adrian knelt, resting a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. I'll try. But no matter what happens, you and Leo will never be alone again. Outside the window, Boston's skyline glimmered against the black water. Somewhere among the shadows of the rail yards, answers waited. And Adrian knew. Tonight, the fight for truth and family would step onto those tracks. The diner smelled faintly of burnt coffee and old linoleum wax. It was past midnight, the kind of quiet where conversations carried. Adrian slid into the booth across from Ben, who stirred the straw in a glass of milk he barely touched. Outside, neon lights flickered across wet asphalt, painting the window in broken reds and blues. For the first time in days, Ben spoke without being asked. Why are you helping us? You don't even know us. Adrian leaned forward, voice low. When I was about your age, I had a brother. He was 9. He got sick. My parents' insurance lapsed, and we couldn't afford treatment. I watched him slip away. I promised myself I'd never let that happen again, not if I could stop it. Ben's eyes widened. You had a brother? Adrian nodded. His throat tightened as he continued. He used to love drawing trains. We'd sit by the tracks, listening to the whistles. I still hear them sometimes. Ben traced the frayed edge of his scarf with small fingers. That's what Leo does. He makes train sounds whenever we walk by the bridge. Adrian let a small smile crease his face. Then maybe your brother and mine would have been friends. The boy's lip trembled. But what if they take us away? What if I can't keep Leo with me? Adrian reached across the table, laying his large hand gently over Ben's. You won't be split up. Not while I'm here. That's a promise. Ben studied him, searching for cracks. Finally, he nodded, though fear still lingered in his small frame. His eyes dropped to Adrian's tie bar, where a delicate heartbeat engraving shimmered in the dim light. Curious, he reached out and traced it with one finger. What's this mean? He asked softly. Adrian glanced down, then back at him. It's a reminder. Life doesn't always beat steady, but when it does, it's worth protecting. Ben's shoulders eased a little. Like Leo's monitor, he whispered. Exactly, Adrian said. For a moment, silence held. Then Ben tugged at the scarf, pulling it free and looping it clumsily around Adrian's wrist. So, you don't forget, he said, voice breaking. Adrian swallowed hard. "I won't." The bell above the diner door jingled, and Dana slipped in, shaking off the cold. She slid into the booth beside Adrian, lowering her voice. "Federal agents are ready. We've got a cloned drive from Orion's controller, enough to trigger warrants." Adrian's jaw hardened. "Then tomorrow we move." "But Voss is already stirring the press," Dana warned. "He's painting you as reckless, using corporate funds on strangers." Adrian looked at Ben, who hugged his scarf back against his chest. "Let him talk. I know why I'm doing this." Dana gave a thin smile. "Then we hold the line, for the boys and for the truth." Outside, a train whistle carried across the frozen night, long and mournful. Adrian closed his eyes, hearing his brother in it, and opened them again to the boy across from him. This time, he felt the vow in his bones. Morning broke gray over Boston, but the hospital halls buzzed with more than routine. Dana spread photographs across the table in Adrian's temporary office, invoice scans, shell vendor trails, and the mirrored loops of Randall Voss's signature. "This is enough to trigger federal warrants," she said. "But once you hand it over, Voss will strike back. He's already feeding the press lines about you misusing corporate funds." Adrian leaned over the table, brass token pressed between his fingers. "Let him. I'd rather be slandered for saving 2 boys than stay silent while he gambles with lives." The door creaked. Ben peeked in, scarf wrapped tight around his neck. "They're saying bad things about you on TV," he whispered. Adrian crouched down. "People afraid of the truth will say anything. What matters is what we know." Ben studied him, then asked softly, "And what do you know?" Adrian placed the token in his palm. "That your father was right. That men like Voss make money by risking lives, and that we're going to stop him." The boy held the coin tight, eyes shining with a mix of fear and trust. Later that afternoon, Adrian walked into a quiet federal office with Donna at his side. He slid a cloned hard drive across the desk to 2 agents. "Every invoice, every forged approval, every shell vendor tied to Orion Systems," he said. "You'll find Voss's fingerprints all over it." The agents exchanged looks, already sensing the weight. One leaned forward. "If this holds, we'll move fast." But Voss was faster in the press. Within hours, headlines blared. "CEO misuses company funds to shelter strangers." The board summoned emergency calls. Shareholders stirred. Adrian stood firm, even as the walls rattled. Back at the hospital, Ben clutched his scarf while watching a reporter sneer about Adrian on TV. "Why are they saying you're bad?" he asked. Adrian sat beside him, voice calm but tired. "Because people like Voss don't want the truth out. They'll try to make me the villain, but the truth doesn't change because someone lies louder." Ben blinked, then whispered, "Then I'll tell people you're good." Adrian smiled faintly, brushing the scarf's frayed edge. "One day, maybe. For now, just know I'm not leaving you." That night, he doubled the security detail around the suite. Guards rotated at the door, cameras covered every angle. He read train fact cards to Ben until the boy's eyes fluttered closed, scarf still looped in his small hand. But as Adrian tucked the blanket around him, he felt the storm pressing harder. Voss was cornered, and desperate men always fought dirtiest. The brass token caught the lamplight on the table beside him, as if daring him to hold steady. And Adrian, jaw set, knew tomorrow would bring either vindication or ruin. The hospital was hushed, the kind of silence that made every beeping monitor feel louder. Adrian stood at the window of the secure suite, phone pressed to his ear as Dana paced. "We traced a signal," she said, voice clipped. "A coded post on the Union Forum. Phrase was, 'Token to track 47. We ran it against freight spurs. GPS pings match a yard near North Pier.'" Adrian's hand closed around the bent brass token in his pocket. He remembered Ben's words. "Dad said the token would bring us back." "Then that's where Miguel is," Adrian said. Dana gave a tight nod. "If he's alive, yes, but it's risky." From the bed, Leo stirred weakly, Ben at his side holding his hand. When Adrian knelt, the boy whispered, "You'll find him? You'll bring him back?" Adrian brushed the scarf over Ben's shoulder. "I'll do everything I can." Night cloaked the freight spur in shadows. Floodlights hummed across rusted tracks. Adrian moved with Dana and 2 federal agents, steel crunching under their boots. Between stacked containers, they found a man slumped, pale, clothes torn from weeks of hiding. "Miguel Alvarez," Adrian called softly. The man's eyes flickered open, wary. Then recognition sparked. "The coin. My boy gave it?" Adrian crouched, showing the token in his palm. "Ben trusted me. I kept him and Leo safe." Miguel sagged with relief, but his voice cracked. "They killed my wife for what I knew. I thought giving them up was mercy, but I couldn't. I couldn't." Adrian steadied him. "You did what you could, but now you're not alone." Miguel's trembling hand reached into his jacket. He pulled a battered phone, screen spiderwebbed. "I recorded them, Voss and Lydia Crane. They admitted the counterfeit scheme, said they'd trigger an accident, brakes on Sentinel trains, kill dozens if it kept the contracts hidden." Dana's breath hissed. "We've got them." Adrian pocketed the phone with the token, heart hammering. Proof? Finally. And a father who needed his sons as much as they needed him. When they guided Miguel out, he faltered. Adrian caught him, shoulder firm. "You're going to see them again. Tonight." Miguel's eyes glistened, broken but hopeful. "If you've kept them safe, you've given me more than I deserve." "Every father deserves a chance to try again," Adrian said quietly. Behind them, the dark yard hummed with echoes of engines and betrayal. But in Adrian's chest, for the first time, a pulse of victory beat. Fragile, but real. The freight spur reeked of oil and rust, the air thick with the metallic rattle of chains. Federal agents closed in on Lydia Crane's team, their radios hissing with terse commands. Adrian stood at the edge of the tracks, coat whipping in the cold wind, while Dana whispered into her mic. Inside the vendor warehouse, the sting unfolded like a chess match. Miguel, bruised but upright, adjusted the wire beneath his shirt. His voice cracked but held steady. "So, you're saying the counterfeit parts are already installed?" Lydia Crane smirked, her manicured hands brushing against a console. "Installed and paid for. And if a brake test goes wrong, well, accidents happen." Beside her, Randall Voss's voice oozed arrogance. "You think anyone will care? City Hall signs off, shareholders cash in, that's business." From the surveillance van, Dana hissed. "They're trying to trigger it now." On the monitors, lights blinked, an automated brake test on Sentinel's main line. Adrian surged forward. "Kill the signal!" Dana's fingers flew. "Override engaged. Signal cut." In the warehouse, Crane slammed the console. "What?" That was the agent's cue. Doors burst open, shouts filled the air, and a federal jacket swept the room. Voss lunged, rage twisting his features, and swung at Miguel. Adrian stepped between them. The punch landed on his jaw, white pain flaring. But he didn't move. He stood tall, absorbing the blow, blue eyes locked on Voss. "Your fight is with me," Adrian said, voice calm as stone. The agents closed in, wrenching Voss and Crane to the ground. Handcuffs clicked, their protests drowned by Miranda rights. Adrian turned, steadying Miguel with one arm. "It's over," he murmured. Miguel shook, tears cutting through grime. "You saved them. You saved my boys." Adrian touched the bent token in his pocket, then glanced toward the hospital in his mind's eye. Ben with the red scarf, Leo fighting for each breath. "No," he said softly, "you did. You told the truth, even when it cost you everything." For the first time in weeks, Miguel stood a little straighter. And for Adrian, the sting wasn't just a corporate victory. It was a vow fulfilled, a promise carved into bone. The hospital lights burned soft and steady as the chaos from North Pier finally settled. Adrian returned to the secure suite with Miguel at his side, the man limping but alive. Ben bolted upright from his chair, scarf flying as he sprinted across the room. "Dad!" His voice cracked as he collided into Miguel's chest. Miguel bent, wincing from bruises, but his arms closed tight around the boy. "I'm here, Benny. I'm so sorry. I should have been here sooner." Leo stirred at the sound, small eyes blinking open. When Miguel leaned over the bed, tears streaked his face. "Hey, champ. Daddy's here?" The boy's frail hand rose and Miguel pressed it against his cheek. For a moment, nothing else mattered, just the rhythm of breath and the warmth of reunion. But peace shattered when alarms screamed. Leo's monitor spiked, then plummeted. Nurses flooded in, shouting codes. His tiny body convulsed, fever surging, infection raging. "No, no, no," Ben sobbed, clinging to Adrian's sleeve. "Don't let him go." Adrian gripped the boy's shoulders. "Look at me, Ben. He's not alone. We're right here." Doctors barked orders, antibiotics, transfusions, emergency protocol. Miguel stumbled back, terror draining his face. "He's too small. He can't." Adrian cut in, voice fierce. "He can. He will. And we won't leave him." Hours blurred into a battle of needles, tubes, and prayers. Adrian never left, reading from the train fact cards he'd carried, his voice calm even when his heart thundered. "Did you know the fastest train in the world can go over 300 miles an hour? That's faster than a plane taking off." Ben pressed his scarf against Leo's chest like a talisman, whispering, "You hear that, Leo? You gotta wake up to ride it." Slowly, painfully, the monitor steadied. Leo's breaths evened, color blooming faintly back into his cheeks. The doctors eased their hands, relief passing through the room like oxygen. Miguel collapsed into the chair, head in his hands. "I almost gave them up. I thought if I disappeared they'd be safer, but I was wrong." Adrian rested a hand on his shoulder. "Fear lies. It makes you think surrender is love, but love stays, even when it's hard." Miguel's voice broke. "I don't deserve them." "You do," Adrian said firmly. "And you're not alone anymore. Be their father. I'll stand with you." Ben leaned against both men, scarf stretched across their shoulders like a bridge. "Does this mean we're family now?" Adrian looked at Miguel, then at the two boys, and nodded. "Yes. From here on out, none of us stand alone." In the hush of that hospital night, a broken man reclaimed fatherhood, two boys found a steady anchor, and Adrian, once only a CEO, chose family over everything else. The shareholder meeting was unlike any Adrian had faced before. The long mahogany table gleamed under harsh lights, board members lined up with folded arms and guarded eyes. Headlines still burned in the press. CEO wastes millions on strangers. Randall Voss was gone, arrested, but the damage lingered like smoke after a fire. Adrian stood at the head of the table, shoulders squared, blue eyes steady. Cole Dynamics failed, not because of one man's greed, but because I didn't see it sooner. For that, I take responsibility. Murmurs rippled, surprise at the admission. He pressed on. "We signed contracts that risked lives. We ignored whistleblowers. One of our own employees, Miguel Alvarez, lost his wife because no one listened. That ends today." He slid a document across the table. "Effective immediately. I'm firing every director who approved Orion's deals without review. Conflicted interests have no place here." A sharp intake of breath echoed. A few faces flushed with outrage, but others leaned forward, listening. Adrian continued, voice resolute. "The Sentinel Transit arm will be spun off into a non-profit trust. Every cent it earns will repair the damage and build a safer infrastructure. And I'm establishing the Harbor Light Fund to cover pediatric marrow patients like Leo and to protect whistleblowers like Miguel." The silence that followed was heavy, almost reverent. Finally, one director spoke. "You'll bankrupt us." Adrian's jaw tightened. No, I'll rebuild us, with integrity. Later, he returned to the hospital where Miguel sat at Leo's bedside, Ben curled asleep against his father's arms. Miguel's eyes were red but alive in a way they hadn't been before. You stood up to them, he said quietly. I had to, Adrian replied. If I want to keep my promise to your boys, it has to start with truth. Miguel's voice shook. I thought being a father meant keeping them from danger, but I almost let fear take them away. Thank you for proving me wrong. Adrian placed the heartbeat-engraved tie bar on the table, its silver gleam catching the light. This was my brother's memory. I've carried it for years, afraid to let it mean more than loss. But Ben reminded me, life is worth protecting, even when it's fragile. Miguel nodded, eyes wet. And you're part of this family now, whether you meant to be or not. For the first time in a long while, Adrian let the weight on his chest ease. The boardroom battles were far from over, but here, beside a red scarf and a bent brass token, he felt something steadier than victory. He felt belonging. Spring came slowly to Boston, but the garden behind Adrian's Beacon Hill townhouse bloomed with promise. A wooden railway snaked across the lawn, its painted cars wobbling as Ben pushed them along the track. Leo, pale but stronger now, clapped from his blanket on the grass. Miguel sat nearby, shoulders finally unburdened, watching his boys with eyes that carried both grief and gratitude. He glanced at Adrian, who stood by the porch with his sleeves rolled, not the distant CEO, but a man who had chosen to stay. You didn't have to build all this, Miguel said quietly. Adrian smiled, faint lines at the corners of his eyes. Yes, I did. They needed a place to play. You needed a place to breathe, and He paused, looking at the boys. I needed to remember what family feels like. Ben ran over, scarf trailing behind him like a red banner. He tied it clumsily around Adrian's wrist. So, you don't forget, he said, voice earnest. Adrian bent down, eyes level with the boys. I won't forget, Ben. Not ever. From his pocket the brass token gleamed in the sun. He pressed it into Leo's hand. Your dad called this luck, but today I think it means something more. It means you're together. Miguel's throat tightened. I thought I'd lost everything, but you gave me my sons back. Adrian shook his head. You fought for the truth. All I did was hold the line. The moment lingered, warm and fragile. Then Ben called out, laughing, Dad! Adrian! Come help us build another track. For the first time in years, Miguel laughed without fear. Adrian joined him on the grass, sleeves brushing dirt as they built wooden rails, the boys' laughter ringing like bells. Later, as the sun dipped low, Adrian reached into his briefcase on the porch. A sealed envelope rested inside, marked in bold letters. Orion. Evidence B. He traced the edge, knowing it hinted at corruption far beyond what they'd stopped. But when he looked back at the garden, the scarf on his wrist, the boys tugging Miguel into the game, he closed the briefcase and set it aside. Family first. City Hall could wait. Adrian leaned back, breathing in the sound of trains made of wood and laughter, and, for the first time since his brother's death all those years ago, he felt peace.